Good day, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This panel is focused on the region to South Africa trade linkages on a program called Engage Trade Africa. It's an awesome project that Catalyze has put together on behalf of the USAID Trade Hub and looks at linking African manufacturers to buyers in South Africa. So it's quite pertinent, I thought, to set up a little panel where we could introduce people to some of the firms in Africa that we're working with and get some insight into what's happening between South Africa and the region. We've got GRAEME LENNIE from the Customs Hub. Years of experience in making sure African and South African companies get the right registrations and are able to clear their products into the market by having the right certification. So he'll be guiding us today on how to get products into the market and current trends and developments in the industry. Yeah, just to introduce Kos, he's one of the trade development officers at the US Trade Hub. And then from the exporters from the Engage Trade Africa program, we've got three of them joining us today. GAURAV from 260 Brand Foods from Zambia. A massive manufacturer, 260 Brands, doing a huge amount of product into Zambia and other parts of Africa. So great to have his experience on that as well. Obviously moving a huge amount of product around the region already. We've got Sandra from Kiyomi Sands, a cosmetics company from Namibia. Quite a lot of experience in the market as well, and great experience in actually creating a brand and developing a manufacturing process in the market. And we've had some great interest in her product from South African companies, both South African manufacturers and other companies looking to sell her product in the market. And then we've got BOITSHOKO from House of Divinity Jewelry, a beautiful jewelry brand from Botswana. I mean, it's something that I would definitely want to buy my wife in the future. I'm so excited about the product, and we've had really raving reviews about her as well and her product. And also great to have three different industries. I think that's why we chose these three exporters. 260 obviously being a food brand, Kiyomi Sands being a cosmetics brand, and House of Divinity being a jewelry brand. Obviously three totally different industries, three different difficulties of getting product into market and different ways of working with the market as well, and different opportunities for them. So we'll go through that today. I'm going to start by just doing a little round of proper introductions. So we'll start with GRAEME. GRAEME, if you can just do a little introduction.
Thank you, Rex. Thank you for that introduction. My name is GRAEME LENNIE. I'm Managing Director and Customs Consultant at the Customs Hub. So we help import-export companies and also clearing agents to trade in South Africa in terms of the customs legislation. So anything from import and export procedures to cross-border trade, licensing and registrations, and tariffing issue, and a whole host of other issues that are related to customs. So the context is customs, and it's South African customs. Obviously, I come with a fair amount of industry experience, having worked for SARS myself, and also a number of clearing agents. So thank you very much for having me on board today.
Thank you, Rex. My name is Cosmas MAMHUNZE. I'm a portfolio manager at USAID Southern Africa Trade Investment Hub, in short, USAID Trade Hub, looking after South Africa.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Everyone, my name is GAURAV VIJAYVARGIYA. I'm the Chief Executive here at 260 Brands. The 260 Brands is a leading manufacturer of high-quality consumer products that enable a good life for Africa's people. And currently we manufacture, market, and distribute reasonably priced consumer products inspired by local taste, primarily from two main value chains of soybean and maize. So we were just founded with a single ambitious objective, and that was to offer these reasonably priced, nutritious consumer products to Africa's people, and at the same time create a socially conscious business that would contribute to ending all forms of malnutrition and support sustainable agriculture everywhere our business has a presence.
Hi everyone, my name is Sandra Muhangele. I'm the owner of Kiyomi Sands Beauty Products. It is a contract manufacturing company in Namibia. We are the only one of its kind that produces, and we do all this type of stability testing, quality control, So we are aiming to become the leading contract manufacturer in Southern Africa. We've been around for 6 years, and we also develop our own in-house brand of products, which we are also trying to export and introduce into other African markets.
Thank you, Rex. Such a stunning lineup of panelists you've brought together and curated. It's an honor to be here. My name is BOITSHOKO KEBAKILE. I am founder and creative director of House of Divinity, and we make exquisitely handcrafted semi-precious stone jewelry. We source all of our raw materials exclusively from the continent of Africa, and we're also proudly a fair trade accredited business. Happy to be here.
So the key today really is to learn about you exporters as well and what your challenges are. So, I mean, over the last few weeks, we've been working with 16 exporters from Africa into South Africa and discovered all kinds of challenges in the market and opportunities. So I think what we really want to start with today is focusing on sort of what are the greatest challenges in the market. And I'm going to put this question to the exporters as a start. What we've seen is there's certain customs issues in the market, but there's also other challenges, history and experience in markets and people actually just understanding what the opportunities are in Africa and actually finding the right opportunity in Africa has been the key for us, what really works. So I'd like to sort of do a round with the exporters again, just having a look at what kind of challenges you guys have faced in the market with trade into Africa, and then maybe have a little quick discussion on that. GAURAV, I know I mean from your side, you know, you guys are doing a soya product grown in Zambia, and have that opportunity to have an African product marketed to South Africa as well. You've done a bit of work in the market already, but I mean, what kind of problems are you sort of facing, or what are the opportunities that you see for your product in the market?
Well, Zambia is not directly connected to South Africa. If we have to speak about South Africa quite specifically, while it is land linked, you know, Zimbabwe and Botswana are in between, and hence our biggest challenge is related to logistics, the cost of logistics. And South Africa, being a very large grower of soybean and maize, which are the two main products that we also work with, price becomes sort of a challenge because of the competitiveness of the transportation that's sort of added on when we have to export our products. So that is, I would say, the first challenge. That's something we face to ensure that it's competitive into the South African market. The second, I believe, is, you know, I think in Southern Africa, we don't operate under one standard, and I think that becomes very difficult. You have packaging legislation that's not the same in South Africa or in Zambia. You have certain documents that are required by customs in South Africa, which are very different from Zambia. When we look at our countries and economies collectively, we're very small, and if we operated in a manner very similar to the European Union or to the United States, for that matter, I mean, yes, it's one country, but you have 50 states, which, you know, essentially are treated as one country. If you look at, you know, the size of the demographic and population, I think that can add a lot of value to us and to start importing, exporting products rather seamlessly. Those would be my few cents to speak on behalf of the food industry.
Okay, and Sandra, from your side, what are you seeing, and what is the opportunity you've seen in the market at the moment?
I think a lot of the issues that we have experienced is definitely with logistics. For example, when we were trying to get products into Angola, we couldn't use road freight because of the infrastructure on the roads. And secondly, also trying to export products into Botswana, a lot of the logistics companies only ask for a certain amount of tons. So if you're a small exporter, it's going to be very difficult to get your products into the neighboring countries. And it ends up being very expensive because we end up flying the products over into the countries. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to find solutions with regards to transportation of goods, because without that, no exportation will take place. So that is a very serious issue. It would be great if our countries could advance to investing into the trains, into high-speed metro trains, as you find in the European countries. So transportation is definitely a very important and a huge issue that needs to be solved if we want to export successfully amongst each other.
Right, and BOITSHOKO, on your side, I mean, jewelry obviously quite restricted into South Africa in certain ways. Yeah, from your angle.
Thank you, Rex. There's been a plethora of challenges for me as far as the jewelry industry is concerned. I will speak firstly in my capacity as founder of House of Divinity, but also PRO of the Jewelry Manufacturing Association of Botswana. So these are challenges that we've been facing as an industry. And I'll start internally. You find that the downstream value chains of the mineral industry, particularly the diamond industry, the jewelry industry in particular, is not very developed in the country. And so you find that key economic stakeholders, your banks, your insurers, don't really have a refined understanding of the industry and don't have an appetite, for example, to take risk when it comes to funding. So we have a colossal impediment when it comes to funding for the industry, and myself in particular. I got my funding through angel investment, which is quite peculiar. A second problem, and I'll echo all the other exporters who spoke quite succinctly and impactfully about the issue of logistics. For me, the issue of logistics manifests in two ways. From a sourcing perspective, with our commitment with House of Divinity and sourcing all of our raw materials exclusively from the continent, you find there's intracontinental trade challenges. Sometimes it's hard to source a particular stone and getting it to myself. And then the transportation logistics are also tend to be quite a nightmare. I have hope, however, and optimism that the African Fair Trade and Free Trade Agreement might help facilitate some of those impediments to intracontinental trade and therefore facilitate export.
I'd like to bring Graeme in here to just discuss logistics. Obviously, with this new free trade agreement coming through, I mean, that's going to change things a lot, or we hope it is going to change things a lot. Graeme, from your side, I mean, what new developments are you seeing, and what discussion has there been about the free trade, and do you think that is going to actually open up opportunities between African countries?
Yes, thank you, Rex. I think it's a good question, and listening to the panelists this morning, I see there's a lot of discussion in the main about South Africa and trading with Africa. In the second part, it's South Africa moving into the African continent and moving goods from infrastructure to documentary control and whatever more. And then, of course, the question is, will the African free trade area, the continental free trade area, will that have an impact? And when and how soon will that have an impact? If we look at the European Union, it took them about 100 years to establish what they have over there. And if we look at the South African context, I've brought to the table this morning a number of issues that we have in South Africa that impact not only South African traders, but when those traders decide to then export into the African continent. So I'm definitely seeing the issues raised over here this morning. My context is the South African customs, but how is this going to affect the free trade area? Particularly because of integration issues, standardization. This word standardization came up as well, which GAURAV brought up, is how do we create a level playing field where the documentary controls, the IT infrastructures, the collaboration between customs entities, the cross-border trade, when we all want to do trade with one another, and yet we each and every single one of us have our own set of rules to comply with. And yet, if we look at the South African context, we battle to understand our own rules to begin with. So it will be very interesting to see how this free trade area is going to impact. I think it will impact us extremely positive, but the question really is the time frame. How long will it take? If we look at the South African context, I see modernization taking off in SARS customs extremely well. It's taken them about 12 or 15 years to get where they are right now. But if you look at the African continent, how long will it take them to catch up as well with that? If we look at this modernization of SARS customs, and we consider that SARS customs is the only government entity that have really and truly modernized. We look at the state veterinary services, we look at the border control, the police services, we look at customs own border control unit. We look at the state veterinary officer, the traditional South African Bureau of Standards. These are all of the other government agencies that have not in fact modernized. And those agencies still stand to hamper and impact trade negatively. If you look at the border police in Durban, for example, and one of the panelists is in Durban here this morning, still stopping automotive equipment for fraud and corruption and looking for drugs, when clearly it's not really of a drug and a cross-border fraudulent flavor. Now you're trying to import into South Africa, manufacture and export into Africa. Imagine those challenges. So yes, this is the first area of concern that I'd just like to raise. The question really was then, what are the issues that are problematic? And the first one is this expedient development of SARS versus the rest of the government agencies. And then you extrapolate that into the African context and how we are collaborating with the other countries. I think we have a long way to go. The second part that I'd just like to touch on very briefly is the new customs legislation. Globally, new legislation has been rolled out by the World Trade Organization, and all countries in Africa too need to adopt the new legislation. But we are doing it at different paces. For example, in South Africa, we are somewhat behind Europe, we are somewhat behind the USA. And yet in the African continent, we have countries that are already ahead of South Africa. So the differing paces of implementing the new customs legislations and the standardized way of doing business is problematic. I see in South Africa, for example, the big challenge that we have is when we implement new legislation, how long does it take the SARS IT division to catch up with the extreme complexity of the legislation that gets implemented? And once SARS is ready, how long then does it take the private sector to implement that? And we're talking now in the South African context, but how is this going to impact the African context? And again, with that free trade area coming into being. And then the third area, just very briefly, I'd like to touch on is the brain drain within SARS. And I suspect that the brain drain is not limited to SARS. It's really an African problem as well. Where on the one hand, we're trying to automate everything, and at the same time as automating everything, we're trying to eliminate the need for highly qualified resources to be employed within the government entities. And so if you look at this pyramid, the top 5% of staff in government agencies, and in our context, SARS Customs, with an extreme amount of knowledge, but the bottom portion of that pyramid, the bottom sort of 95% of that pyramid with no real knowledge at all. So for example, I had a client with a truck go off the road 2 weeks ago, and that truck went off the road. It was carrying bonded goods. Those bonded goods were destined for an African destination. Those bonded goods are still destined for an African destination, but we're battling to get the authorities to understand the inspection process that needs to take place and what we need to do in order to eventually cross-border those goods, given that it was in a road accident. So we're finding ourselves in a position where we now having to educate the customs authority whilst at the same time complying with the very regulation that they have implemented. How does this then again extrapolate into the African context, and how do we overcome these issues with the African continental free trade area? I think it's a question of time. I don't know how long it will take, but I am very positive that the long-term future looks very good for us. It's just a question of how long. So thank you very much again. I think those are the three broad areas. The one broad area is the customs modernization, not only in South Africa, but in the African context. The second part is the implementation of global customs policy and regulation and legislation, and how do we extrapolate that into the African context. And then the third one is the brain drain at SARS Customs, and what can we expect again from the African context. Thank you very much.
Because maybe I don't know if you got some insight into that as well. Obviously the USA Trade Hub also quite involved in trying to make it easier for people to export between regional markets as well. Do you maybe add something onto there?
Thanks, Rex. So the issues that have been raised actually speak to some characterization that I came across to say when one looks at intra-regional trade, or intracontinental trade, you find that in Europe, it's over 70%. In Asia, it's over 50%. But when it comes to Africa, you find that trading among neighbors is limited to a mere 12%. It might have increased, but it just shows that we are not trading amongst ourselves, which is one of the things that USA Trade Hub is trying to do through one of the objectives, which is to promote exports from the region to South Africa. But then there are some challenges, obviously. There are demand side challenges, then there are supply side challenges. So when you look at the demand side, for example, when you look at the retailers in South Africa, some of them have not been importing from the region. They've been more comfortable importing from other regions, such as Europe. Even when you walk into a retailer, you find that there are certain products that are really coming away from other parts of the world, which could be sourced from the region. So there's an issue around do they have the confidence that the firms in the region can supply. So for me, that's one side. Then the other side also is on the supply side is looking at capacity. Some of the firms have not prepared themselves to export. So if you look at South Africa, it's an open market. They are not being approached by regional suppliers only, but they are suppliers from all over. But you find that a buyer in South Africa is also looking at internationally recognized certifications. So if a regional supplier does not meet those certifications, it becomes a problem, because he has got options. He can source from other suppliers that meet internationally recognized certifications. The other part is to do with process. So you find that even in the region, there is lack of knowledge around how can we export to South Africa. So I'm happy to say that USA Trade Hub created a regional cross-border trade toolkit, and that toolkit is meant to unpack or demystify certain areas that are thought to be difficult when it comes to exporting to South Africa. And we are even going a step further to digitize those. We're coming up with video clips that will cover the various aspects, the process, the how, and even Incoterms, or even preparing how to do your pricing, your trade terms. So those are some of the things that we are also trying to do to help. Thanks, Rex.
Awesome, thanks, guys. That brings to mind, what can be done in the market as well. So, we've come across, especially some of the jewelry companies, saying, it's actually easier to export to America than it is to export to South Africa. And maybe that's also some of the great work that the USA Trade Hub's done, but and obviously the different tiering system for a AGOA agreement. The key stuff that we seem to be able to get in from Africa is raw materials into South Africa. That's been a key opportunity. Is there any talk of a adaptation of the AGOA agreement where, because we are on the second tier of AGOA, where we, have to use South African raw materials to get to be part of the free trade agreement into America? Is there any talk with USAID Trade try to see if South Africans can, rather than source product from Africa, raw materials for Africa, manufacture products here and then get that to the US?
I think that we are now talking rules of origin when it comes to what is called when it comes to country fabric provision. This applies to textiles and apparel. So it's only that provision where South Africa is limited to utilization of fabric produced in South Africa, or from AGOA eligible countries, or from the US, such that the end product can be exported to the US under AGOA. But as for other products, South Africa can source from anywhere, and the rule is that the value addition has to be 35% plus. Okay. So to answer your question, our objective one actually tries to address that, to say there are ingredients that can be sourced from the region, and suppliers or manufacturers in South Africa can make use of those ingredients, produce and export to the United States. That's the essence of this discussion and this assignment actually.
Awesome. Gaurav, from your side, there's been discussion on also the opportunity with maybe contract manufacturing in South African products and into Africa. Where do you see the opportunity lie there for you?
I think that opportunity actually exists and is real. I had some conversations yesterday with a very prominent retailer in South Africa, and we were discussing this. And I think the hub's importance, I think we as 260 Brands have felt very firsthand. Sorry, I'm going to deviate a little bit, but a lot of people I know in Europe who are trying to come into this market, try and say, all right, how can we get into the market? I said, look, you've got to go through a channel. You've got to go through the Association of Manufacturers. You've got to go to the leading manufacturers, whatever industry it may be, but you've got to follow that channel. I think the hub, they've done a very very good job at this actually. So coming back to answering your question, I think it's because of the hub sort of connection to other retailers within, the region. It doesn't have to just be South Africa, but I think the guys who are very serious, they're interested, and they can actually discuss this sort of transaction, for the exporter side being export ready, and for the importer side being very clear and showing exactly what they need, can really get the ball rolling. And I think that's required more and more, not just between South Africa and Zambia. Obviously, that's great. But the hubs helped us with the US. Our products are now available on Amazon. I was just coming back from the US 2 weeks ago. So I think that sort of catalyst is very important across the region to help us partner with people. But yes, to answer your question, lots of opportunity to do private label. I think all it requires is understanding each other and more dialogue. So as long as we look at ourselves as one country, one region, and we make it seem, a little more seamless, very, very feasible.
Awesome, thanks, Gaurav. And Sandra, from your side, have you seen that opportunity with possibility of contract manufacturing or maybe even partnering with other South African companies to manufacture and get product into international markets or even your own market?
Yeah, I think there is definitely an opportunity, especially, if you look at the populations of countries, if I end up exporting into South Africa, it only makes sense for feasibility purposes to have the products produced in South Africa because of the larger market. And I think it would be great if we could obviously support countries that do want to manufacture their products in-house, because I do worry about having to only look at private labeling in South Africa, because then where does that leave other manufacturers in other countries? So we can't only just move towards to private labeling in South Africa only. There are private label manufacturers such as myself in other countries. So the discussion does need to move slightly in my opinion. We can contract manufacture and we can also export to other continents as well. It's not just South Africa alone. So
yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's a great point, is that, contract manufacturing doesn't have to happen for you by a South African contract manufacturer to get your products into market. It can go the other way, where they're trying to get into Namibia or to further north of you into Angola, etc., and they can actually contract manufacture their product in your market. We've come across a lot of the issues with specifically cosmetics. The health regulations body it makes it very difficult to get those products across border, and therein lies the opportunity. So they think with USH Trade Help, with bringing on partners like ourselves and getting this conversation going, I think that seems to be the key, is that African companies are working together, and there is discussion going between them. So I think it's dialogue that continues. BOITSHOKO, I mean, from your side, it's got quite a different angle from your side, because you're making specific custom jewelry. But is there any opportunity for you that you're possibly making jewelry on behalf of people in South Africa, or trying to find investment from South Africa or other key collaborators? Because the other thing that we wear many hats, but we've got a lot of tech companies. We do a lot in game development space and animation space, and there's a lot of work between those communities of sort of collab work where they work together. Obviously, being online, it's sometimes a bit easier, but it's possibly an opportunity for something like for jewelry in the market.
Absolutely, Rex. So you're right. My product line is quite peculiar in the sense that I'm essentially operating in the luxury industry, and I really have to tug at people's heartstrings. As far as being able to produce and manufacture for other people, yes, there is such a conversation going on with a prospective client in America, where they were looking into me producing a line of jewelry for their particular brand. However, for purposes of brand identity going forward, I'm quite eager to strike a balance between servicing other clients in that regard, but also flooding the market with products that specifically have the HOD brand identity on them, because that's why I'm in this business anyway, to try and promote the principles of sustainable sourcing, Pan-Africanism, and all the principles and ideals that we stand for. So the idea is not to only just look to comforting and cushioning my bottom line by producing for other people, but it is also to communicate the ethos of House of Divinity. So I'm really keen to, engage with retailers who understand that principle and are willing to accommodate and bring on board the House of Divinity line in their retail stores. And I'm quite optimistic about that. As far as South Africa, those conversations are still going on, and I'm yet to meet some buyers. I don't know if it's because perhaps the South African market doesn't really have as much of an appetite for my brand story as much as the American market does. But I think it's just going to be a matter of timing and really finding the right retailer that I align with.
Great, awesome.
So,
I mean, we've chatted a lot about opportunities in the market. I mean, sort of advanced trade between Africa and South Africa. I mean, what do you see as the key catalyst at the moment for you? I mean, in your opinion, what is going to make the difference for your companies to find the right people? I mean, BOITSHOKO, you've kind of mentioned it. I mean, happy for you to continue on that. Finding the right partner is obviously key, but I mean, what can help you in that regard?
I love that question, Rex, because ideally it touches on to why I exist and why I'm in the manufacturing industry to begin with on the continent of Africa. When you ask me what I feel is the missing puzzle that would really get the entire machine working properly as far as intracontinental trade, I think it's a realization by all Africans that we have to trade together. It's not even an option. We may be very different as far as culture, demographics, what have you, but what connects us all is the need to have some kind of living, to build some kind of living through trade. So I feel when we understand the necessity of coming together as far as trade is concerned and really consolidating each other's economic futures in that regard, then the willingness will be there, whether it's political or from the private sector. So I think there perhaps has to be a campaign, a PR campaign, where we really rally the masses on the continent to say it is time for us to trade together and put Africa where it deserves to be on the international trade stage.
That's great. And Guru, from your side,
obviously I'm going to speak with a different perspective as compared to BOITSHOKO. I think for us it's going to be more so, I think there's a twofold approach, and it'll be in two different phases as well. I think the first is finding interested parties, or importers rather, who are willing to work with multiple exporters, thereby sort of helping the exporter combat the first challenge, which is logistics. And I think Sandra had mentioned this in the initial part of our sort of conversation where it's not cost effective until you get a full container load, right? Especially for like fast moving consumer goods. So I think the first step is consolidate, similar products, fast moving products. It could be anything between toilet paper, cosmetics, and food and beverages that's consolidated for the first time until the volume picks up. And as the interest in the marketing grows in that respective export market, then you're able to justify full container volumes, which then sort of tackle the problem of your logistics, which is very high at this stage. So I think that sort of coordination and cooperation inter-country, and also from that exporter side, or the importer side rather, can be very helpful to make sure that this actually works well.
Graham, from
Yes, it's a very, very good question, and I'm just listening to the debate on that. I think really a dedication to make that happen, intra-African trade, to set up an export department that not only understands the export countries' trade requirements, but also the import country on the other side. So dedicated departments that really understand the laws and regulations of the counterparty. Secondly is the knowledge of the trade agreements, the SADC trade agreement, how to, for example, draw up bills of material and catalogs in such a way, and how to manufacture articles in such a way that you take advantage and qualify for these various trade agreements, the SADC and the African Continental Free Trade Area. And then the third one is really a policy issue, which is more governmental, and that is the standardization. I think is really required across border in order for us to be able to trade much more easily with one another.
Thank you, Graham. Great, guys. Well, I mean, I think, the key thing that we're realizing here, and I'm realizing more and more, is that there is opportunity in Africa, but it comes down to collaboration, communication is huge, and trying to work together. I think there needs to be a huge push from all African countries that they're trying to work together, that they're strengthening the African economy. There is that drive. I think over the last 12 months, there's been a definite shift in the fact that, hey, why am I looking at countries all over around the world? Let's look at working with more Africans working with each other, because we've got more resources than the rest of the world put together. We just have to use them in the right way and use them together in the right way. So I think it's collaboration, it's communication. And I mean, that's what we want to facilitate over the coming years, is that there is a lot of discussion going on between people. That's what US Trade have been doing for many, many years as well, of trying to set that up. But a key is getting communication going, getting people talking. And I think the big shift in the last 2 years, and a lot of people have said to me, COVID has actually changed our world and put things to start happening 5 years ahead. The fact that we're now talking and doing a conference online and chatting together, the opportunity to connect and speak to people has sped up a huge amount. And I think that's been a huge issue in the African economy over many years. Running trade events in South Africa, it's often much easier for us to get people from the US and from Europe and from Asia to come to South Africa and get involved in events than actually just getting people from neighboring countries, even Botswana, Swaziland, Namibia, to come, because it's actually sometimes cheaper to fly from international markets to South Africa than from there. The other key thing is that, obviously internationals can afford to come to South Africa and market themselves. It's a lot cheaper at everything's always at $1 price. So I think the world has changed a lot in the last 12 months. That opportunity to link with people and have those hard-hitting meetings with people is much easier now. And we need to use that. We need to use the technology to our advantage, and start collaborating and communicating a lot with more people. And people like yourself, Graham, are coming on board and giving advice and being that opportunity to open up people to the market and share their experience. Obviously, you're based in South Africa. You're not moving overseas. You're staying here and wanting to develop the opportunities locally. From what I'm chatting to all of you, each of you are African we want Africa to succeed. So it's communicating, it's working together, using the powers that be, like USA Trade Hub and other facilities in Africa. I know the USA Trade Hub are working with various provincial agencies, with Department of Trades, and engaging with them and trying to see how they can work together. It's working together. And obviously a lot stronger if we are together. So thanks for everyone joining. I just want to see if we can leave with one little comment from each of you on just a piece of advice for exporters out there. So Sandra, what your advice is to people starting up business or growing their business and trying to export it to new markets.
I think it's important that from the very beginning, whatever product you are producing, always put in mind, would this product fit with the other brands that are out there in Zambia, in South Africa, in Canada? So always have the international mindset of where would this specific product fit in, and can it compete with those brands, or else you won't be able to attract international distributors and so forth. So already from the beginning, design your product to fit into other international markets.
Brilliant. BOITSHOKO?
Thank you, Rex. Mine will be very short. Trust your intuition. Trust your intuition, and also rely on stakeholders that can guide you as far as understanding the market better and how it works, because it does get a bit rigorous. So trust your intuition from a production perspective and rely on a network. That's all I have to say.
Good advice. Gaurav, from your side?
For those that are starting off, I'll say ask a lot of questions. People on the other side make a lot of assumptions that when you're starting off, you should know everything. And if you don't know, accept them. You don't know. Ask a lot of questions. I'll give you one small example. Sorry, I know we're wrapping up, but one small example. We just exported to the US, and we exported through AGOA, and we paid thousands. We had to pay thousands of dollars in demurrage because we didn't have a certificate of origin from Zambia. A very simple certificate that we have for every requirement. But because our transporters didn't tell us to have it, we didn't get it. And when it got there, they said, well, you're supposed to have it. It's expected, So the way I see it is, for every small thing, ask a lot of questions, whether you're trying to enter a new market, trying to get advice from people in that market, whether you're trying to understand your entire supply chain. Ask a lot of questions. Ask yourself a lot of questions as well.
Great advice, Gaurav. Graham, from your side, a little wrap up and advice to people.
Yes, I think I'm picking off from where Gaurav ended over there. Absolutely ask a lot of questions. Really know what you are doing before you do it, in a sense that you need to do your research. Understand your product, understand your market, understand the requirements, understand the policy, understand the legislation. Ask questions all of the time. Ensure also, as BOITSHOKO mentioned, trust your network, use your network, because I see too many companies not utilizing their network and taking the chance and taking the plunge. And the problem with that is, when you burn your fingers the first time, you are less inclined to take a chance the second time around. But if you do your research, you get registered properly, you understand the market and the conditions, it's a much easier ride and a much more encouraging ride to take a second round and a third round and to crack that market. Kos,
any last words from you and advice?
From my side, it's understand the trends. So, for example, there is a trend in South Africa, the retailers and buyers to source from the region. It's a growing trend. Suppliers must be prepared to ride on that. There's also a trend to have private labeling as a trend in when it comes to some of the retailers. I understand some were even talking about in the next 5 or so years to have 40% of their stock or their shelves with private labeled products. So the message is to exporters, your business model must be flexible enough to accommodate these changes. Thank you.
Thanks. I like your comment there as well, Kos, that there is this huge drive internationally to source product from Africa. We have amazing products, and we want to see that from South Africa as well, that there's this huge demand from getting product from Africa. It does obviously come down to free trade agreements and making sure that the trading custom departments understand each other and working very closely together. But there's a huge opportunity here. Proximity is the biggest one. So yeah, let's work together. From my side, I would say communicate. We always say that. So the more you communicate with people, the more you talk, the more open you are. Let's work together. We're stronger together. We love our continent, and let's keep on working very closely together. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. Really excited. If there's any buyers watching now as well, please get in contact, chat to us. We'll introduce you to all these manufacturers in Africa. We're working with 16, but there's many more as well. So don't be shy. There are great associations working on this and funders working on this, like US Trade Hub. Please don't feel shy. Again, communicate. If you're unsure, you're looking and sourcing for a product, come and chat to me. Come and chat to someone like Kos. We are here to really help that opportunity. So we want South Africans to come out and find out where things are. One great thing that I keep on coming across with this project is that when we're speaking to buyers, obviously any buyer's skeptical of a supplier to start with. But the great thing that we're able to say to them is like, look, you've got us here. You've got the US Trade Hub. We've actually got people in the countries that are helping those manufacturers and communicate with them. So if there's ever a problem, you've got two people in South Africa that can help you and be in contact with them. So don't be scared of the opportunity. Communicate. Don't be shy of trying to take an order from this company. If you want to take an order or put an order in with them, and you're a little bit unsure, have us on board. Let us help you with that situation and guard that deal all the way through. And it's always that first hump that you got to get over. Get over that first order, and then once you know the person, you can start doing the deal with them. It's also not all phone based now, so you're not just talking to someone that you're not seeing. We're all seeing each other now. It's just as good as seeing someone at a show. At some stage, obviously, get out there, get into your countries, go and explore those regions. There's beautiful landscapes everywhere you go. Bring out people into South Africa as well. So if you want to work with a manufacturer, bring that person to South Africa, meet with them as well. So please, let's start working a lot more together and communicating as much as possible. But thank you everyone for your time today, and looking forward to working with all of you guys in the future. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Many thanks, Rex.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.